at the president's birthday party. I accidentally wore the dress of the president's late wife, Eleanor. The president's 10-year-old son, Lucas, pushed me into the champagne tower in front of everyone. He looked at me coldly as I struggled helplessly on the ground. His expression was as indifferent as his father, Alexander. Don't think that wearing my mother's clothes will make you become her. You are just my dad's secretary. I can have my dad fire you at any time. Cold drinks splashed all over me. My heart suddenly turned cold. I lay helplessly on the ground. My gaze fell on the child I had raised for 10 years, Lucas. No need to worry anymore. I'll submit my resignation letter tomorrow. 10-year-old Lucas stared at me. His gaze was as cold as a knife. It sent a chill down my spine. I took the shawl handed to me by the servant. I turned to go back to my room to change clothes. With a tearing sound, the hem of the dress was suddenly ripped by the corner of the table, leaving a noticeable tear. She shouted, "You're going too far. This is the dress my mother cherished the most in her lifetime." Lucas, who just moments ago wore a teasing expression, suddenly looked like an angry little lion. His eyes were red as he stared at me. His youthful face was filled with disgust. I looked at him with mixed feelings. "Lucas, you're lying. Eleanor has always favored extravagant designs. She has no interest in such simple and plain dresses." Lucas's lies were exposed. I felt a bit uneasy inside. He stomped heavily on the ground. He ran off angrily. I didn't go after him to comfort him as I usually would. Let him calm down by himself. After all the guests had left, I returned to my room to be alone. As soon as I pushed open the door, I saw a pale dog corpse hanging right in front of me. It scared me, making my heart race. Bright red blood dripped onto the floor. It stained my shoes red. It also got the snowball's fur wet. I stood there in a daze. I couldn't react. Then I heard Lucas behind me let out a piercing laugh. "Serves you right. You made me lose my mother. I want you to experience the pain of losing a loved one." He made a strange face at me. Then he happily ran away. I looked at the large pool of blood on the ground. I felt a heaviness in my heart. I couldn't speak for a long time. At that time, I carried a simple bag. I came to this city alone. Later, I started working for the Anderson family. But this huge Anderson family is like a beautiful birdcage. No one can live freely. They took away all my hobbies, leaving only a child to take care of and a precious little dog. I spent 10 years raising them to adulthood in the blink of an eye. They were gone. I sighed. I suddenly smelled a familiar scent of fur. I looked up. Alexander was quietly standing in front of me. Father and son share similar personalities. Both appear proud and indifferent. They seem oblivious to others. He opened his arms, waiting for me to help him change clothes. At the same time, he said, "I heard about today's events, Sophia. This time it's your fault." He looked at me with no reaction, furrowed his brows, clearly a bit unhappy. He glanced at the bloodstains on the ground. His tone softened a little. "Lucas is young. If you just let him be, there wouldn't be a problem." Alexander gave a signal. Immediately, someone came over to clean up the bloodstains on the ground. The room was dimly lit. Shadows were vague and unclear. The snowball that was just playing by the table. The snowball that was just playing by the table. In the blink of an eye, it has disappeared without a trace. This reminds me of myself. For the past 10 years, I have been taking care of the father and son, but my efforts seem to have left no mark in their hearts. Alexander changed his clothes. He sat on the sofa. He gently tapped the table. "Let me pour some tea." I instinctively did as he said. As I approached, he suddenly pulled me into his arms. His fingers gently brushed my face. He said in a low voice, "Today is your birthday. Don't take the medicine anymore. If by accident there is one, just consider it a birthday surprise from me." His warm breath brushed against my neck, yet it made me feel a bone-chilling cold. Alexander has a strong need in that regard. In the first month after I arrived at the Anderson family, I was found to be pregnant. I just wanted to be happy. Suddenly, an abortion pill appeared in front of me. "They even forced me to take it," he said. "I will only love Isabella in this life, and I will only acknowledge Lucas as my child. If you have a child, you might get distracted. I can't focus on taking care of Lucas." Since then, he always watches me to make sure I take the birth control pill. For a full 10 years, I have never stopped. Today, facing Alexander's kindness, I should feel surprised, to respond wholeheartedly. However, for the first time, I avoided his touch. "Alexander, the deadline we agreed upon 10 years ago has arrived. I'm leaving tomorrow. The warmth and expectations from back then have long since disappeared without a trace. Alexander's tone was clearly dissatisfied. Lucas is still young. As his aunt, you haven't taught him well. This is your responsibility. I've been lenient enough not to hold you accountable. What right do you have to throw a tantrum? Aunt, I shook my head with a bitter smile. At that time, Alexander instantly fell in love with my good friend Isabella. He disregarded his family's objections. He insisted on marrying her. With the help of the Anderson family, Isabella quickly became successful. They transformed from an ordinary family in a remote area into a prestigious family. After getting married, they had a very good relationship. They were stuck together like glue. They were very affectionate towards each other. But unfortunately, fate is unpredictable. Isabella died due to complications during childbirth. Isabella was afraid of losing the support of the Anderson family, so she sent me, her adopted daughter, to be a substitute. Alexander only had Isabella in his heart. He didn't want to marry anyone else, but he was also worried about the young Lucas being left without care. In the end, the two families agreed to a 10-year arrangement. They allowed me to stay in the Anderson family as a special assistant. Although I was a special assistant, there was no formal employment contract, and there was no legal protection. It was determined solely by an agreement. That decided my fate. It's really laughable when you think about it. I took care of Lucas for a full 10 years. Think about it carefully. I'm still single now. I came back to my senses, speaking calmly. No emotional outbursts. The agreement has expired. Staying in the Anderson family in such an unclear manner will cause trouble for you and Lucas. Letting others gossip. Alexander's furrowed brow relaxed slightly. His gaze was probing and questioning, but his tone softened a bit. If you can bear children for the Anderson family, I will definitely include you and your child in the family tree, giving you the status you deserve. No need for that. No one would willingly let themselves suffer. In this lifetime, I've already tasted the bitterness of being an illegitimate daughter. How could I bear to let my child walk the same path I did? I tidied up my clothes. I took the company's seal and relevant documents of the Anderson family from the bedroom. A few days ago, I have already sorted out all the accounts. Next, Isabella's people will take over. She will take over all my work. Lucas is getting older. We need to find a professional teacher to teach. My level is not enough. I can't teach him. Alexander waved his hand. Valuable property documents and that agreement, scattered on the ground like waste paper. He stepped on them without hesitation. Sophia, don't be ungrateful. Today is your birthday. I won't say much more to you. Just stay in your room these days. Think it over carefully. With a bang, the heavy mahogany door closed. It separated us. I looked up at the sky. The light gradually faded away. Finally, it completely disappeared. I couldn't help but smile. That was a sky lantern wishing me good luck for my birthday. But today, actually, it's not my birthday. That day was the first time Alexander and Isabella met, the night before I was sent to the Anderson family. My foster mother, Margaret, came to find me. She told me to remember all of Isabella's characteristics and to imitate her behavior and way of speaking. Margaret looked at me eagerly. She said firmly, Sophia, you need to make him see you in a different light. Only then can you establish your place in the Anderson family. Just as she said, Alexander usually doesn't care about anything, yet he remembered my birthday. This day is the one I look forward to the most each year. Only on this day can I feel a bit of the warmth of home, being momentarily held in his heart, but stolen things eventually have to be returned. Just as I was thinking this, a sudden sharp pain struck my forehead. I looked up. Lucas was standing on the wall, with a slingshot in his hand, with a smug look on his face. If you stay with the Anderson family any longer, one day, what hits you in the head won't be a stone, but a bullet. He takes pride in his precise skills. Completely forgotten. I was the one who taught him how to handle guns and race cars, but 10 years have passed. This father and son, one treats me like air, the other wishes I would disappear immediately. It's cool in the evening. Be careful not to catch a cold. I reminded him one last time, then turned and entered the bedroom. The next morning, Margaret hurried over, stopped me, wouldn't let me leave. She knelt before me like she did 10 years ago, her voice filled with pleading. Sophia, Lucas is still young. He can't live without you. Your dad and brother rely on Alexander to make money. Isabella's children need your care too. You can't be willful and reckless. I finally couldn't help but interrupt her. You went on and on for half a day. Why don't you care about how I'm doing? Margaret was suddenly taken aback. The sound of a car outside suddenly interrupted her. A graceful woman walked in with a smile. As soon as she entered the door, Lucas rushed over and hugged her tightly. "Victoria, I missed you so much." They walked past me hand in hand, without even saying hello, along with the scent of perfume that wafted over, and the idle gossip of the servants. This Miss Sophia has had a tough time. She has always stayed with the Anderson family, trying every means to please Alexander and Lucas. But in the end, she is even worse off than an illegitimate daughter. Yesterday, she was still insisting on leaving. Today, she changed her mind again. Someone said with a smile, it was probably because Victoria arrived. She got nervous, worried about losing her job, worried about job security. Lucas looked up, being spoiled in Victoria's arms. The voice said sweetly, "Dad has been waiting for you for a long time. Let's go see him together. Victoria is my favorite. She smells nice. Her voice is pleasant to hear, unlike some people, whose words and actions are not very proper." I stood there in a daze. It felt like something sharp had pricked my heart. I have lived in the South since I was young. When I first arrived in this city, I was not used to anything. The northern cold wind cut like a knife against my face. I fell ill several times in a row. I almost didn't make it through. The servants at home mocked me for not being elegant enough. They even refused to bring me medicine. When I was sick, only the young Lucas stayed by my side. She innocently comforted me by saying, "Sophia, get better soon. You look especially handsome when you ride a bike." Especially handsome. The little guy who used to always be by my side. Now he feels like a sharp thorn, deeply embedded in my heart. This change was something I never anticipated. Victoria greeted me with a smile. Her demeanor remained gentle, but the words she spoke were clearly provocative. "Miss Sophia, don't take what the child says seriously." I didn't respond to her. I went directly to help Margaret up. "Say, you see, over there with Alexander and Lucas, there is always someone taking care of them. Victoria is the second young lady of the Thompson group. She resembles Isabella by about 70%. Thus, she can freely enter the study that I cannot. She easily won the favor of that father and son." Margaret stood up. The sadness on her face disappeared. She coldly asked me, "Are you really going to leave?" I replied, "I don't want to be trapped in this beautiful cage for a lifetime, wasting my life for two men who don't care about me," I said firmly, with a loud clap. A loud slap struck my face. "Doesn't understand the rules, will never achieve greatness." Margaret said angrily, "If it weren't for my good heart saving you back then, you would have drowned in the river long ago. I didn't expect you to be so heartless. You're even worse than the dog Isabella raised." As Margaret prepared to hit me again, I quickly grabbed her wrist. I said, "Isabella raised me until I was 8. I've already repaid that debt over the past 10 years. The accounts between us have long been settled." I stared into her eyes and said seriously to her, "These past 10 years, I lay in the hospital bed, silently enduring Alexander's indifference in the Anderson family. I took care of every detail with great effort. I treated Lucas as my own child. I loved him wholeheartedly and accompanied him. I've done my best. There's nothing to feel guilty about in my heart. The only person I feel sorry for is myself." Margaret couldn't persuade me. She left in a huff as I turned around. I happened to collide with Alexander's deep-set eyes. There was no expression on his face. He looked at me coldly, as if he were looking at a disobedient little animal. He casually threw a sentence at me. "Sophia, you're quite clever. Don't do anything foolish. You should understand. If you leave the Anderson family, you will lose everything. I have already found a prettier puppy for you. I will send it to you later," he said casually, with a relaxed tone as if he were helping. "If Lucas makes you feel troubled, then let Victoria take care of her with you in the future. I have arranged for someone to tidy up the room, to let her stay here. According to Alexander's arrangement, I should be grateful to him happily and take good care of everything for Victoria, to be a competent, supportive wife. But I've had enough. Let the butler handle these matters. I have to go." Victoria slowly walked out from behind Alexander. She said softly, "Miss Sophia doesn't seem to welcome me very much. Then I won't disturb you. Miss Sophia comes from a prestigious family. I'm just a child brought into this world from a second marriage. I'm surely not valued by you." She had just taken a few steps. Alexander stopped her. "Don't underestimate yourself. A woman's happiness completely depends on a man's attitude." He glanced at me, then picked up Victoria in one swift motion. It happened quickly. A murmur came from the study. Hearing it in broad daylight was a bit embarrassing. Lucas made a face at me. He said, "I just hope Victoria is with my dad. She's different from someone like you who only values money." I stared intently at this kid. He's been raised by me since childhood. I want to hear what he has to say. You really think that way, of course. Lucas's eyes revealed his disgust without any concealment. His tone was very certain. He said coldly, "Don't think I don't know anything. Back then, you were after the wealth of the Anderson family. You used all means to get close to my dad, causing my mom to die of a broken heart. She didn't even close her eyes. You who have done wrong, I will never forgive you. One day, I will personally seek justice for my mom." I saw the amulet on his chest at a glance. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. In the end, I could only sigh. Lucas has been weak since childhood. To ensure he grows up well, I personally prepared every meal and every sip of water for him. I knelt step by step. I climbed thousands of steps. I sought this amulet for him. I taught him to speak and walk. I played with him and helped him learn. When it got cold, I added clothes for him. Fan him when it's hot. 10 years of careful care. It can't withstand a few words of provocation from outsiders. Some things you might only understand when you grow up. I paused for a moment. Continue speaking. However, it's okay if you can't figure it out. After all, we won't see each other again in the future. In Lucas's puzzled gaze, I picked up the phone and dialed out. At that moment, a man rode a motorcycle quickly towards me. He skillfully leaned and drifted. He stopped steadily beside me. I got on the motorcycle. I looked back once. The words Anderson Group shone brightly in the sunlight, just like when I first saw it at the Anderson family. I understand. After I leave, there will be other women brought here. However, those will have nothing to do with me anymore. The man got off the motorcycle. He politely said to me, "Miss Sophia, your car has been serviced." I nodded slightly. I said thank you. Then I got on the motorcycle. Lucas stared at me blankly. "You." I ignored him. I just let out a long sigh. Soon, I would be able to leave this place, the place that trapped me for 10 years. I tightened my grip on the handlebars. I was about to leave. Lucas picked up a toy gun, aimed it at me, pulled the trigger. She said, "Don't think that a few sweet words will change my and Dad's minds." Lucas said with childish anger, "If you dare to leave, don't come back." The Lego bullet he shot flew towards me carrying a child's fury. Fortunately, Lucas is still young, not strong enough. The bullet missed. It only grazed my arm. I was in great pain. I lost my balance for a moment. I fell off the balance bike. The nanny and the housekeepers nearby were originally just watching the commotion. Now they were all scared to death. They quickly gathered around. Lucas saw the blood flowing from my arm. He was also stunned. His mouth was agape. He couldn't say a word for a long time. I gritted my teeth. I quickly got back on my feet. I grabbed the security guard's rubber baton nearby. I aimed it directly at Lucas. Although he usually acts tough, he was also quite scared when he saw me like this. He kept backing away. His voice trembled as he said, "I didn't mean to really hit you. I just wanted to scare you a bit, so you won't dare to come back again." My arm was bleeding. Blood dripped to the ground, drop by drop. I raised my hand and used the rubber baton to knock the talisman off Lucas's wrist. The rubber stick knocked the amulet off Lucas's wrist. Lucas was so scared that he started crying loudly. Alexander and Victoria heard the noise. He walked out of the room. He saw the injury on my arm. His expression instantly became serious. "Sophia, quickly go back and find a doctor to treat it." I waved my hand. I tore off a corner of my skirt. I hastily wrapped up my bleeding arm. Alexander's expression became even worse. The usually indifferent butler couldn't help but advise me, "Miss Sophia, don't be stubborn. If you walk out of this door, you will never come back." She glanced at Victoria and said anxiously, "You know how many women are out there, desperately trying to get in." Then she said to me, "Alexander treats you so well. Although the young master is a bit mischievous, he has a good heart. What more could you be dissatisfied with in everyone's eyes? I, a woman from an ordinary family, can enter the Anderson Group and also take care of the Anderson family's son. It's simply a stroke of luck. I am the secretary of the president of Anderson Group. I am a gentle and considerate stepmother. I am also a stepping stone for my family to gain leverage. But I have never been myself. No one cares how free I used to be. No one cares how I want to live my life." I stepped over the amulet that had fallen on the ground. I placed the pot of succulents I brought when I moved into the villa in front of Snowball's doghouse. I don't know how to be a mother, and I have never done it well. I stared at that pot of succulents. My voice was a bit choked. I worked hard to raise Snowball, but I didn't let it enjoy its old age. I spent a full 10 years. and still couldn't make Lucas understand respect and gratitude, so I should just leave. I only hope we never meet again. The world is vast. Let's each live our own lives well. Alexander didn't persuade me anymore. His expression was grim. He turned and left. Before leaving, he dropped a line. Sophia, you will regret this in the future. The sound of the engine is so loud that it makes my ears buzz. All those annoying words have been thrown far away. I haven't felt this sense of freedom between heaven and earth for a long time. Those branded clothes are like shackles. They locked away all the happiness of my first half of life. Amidst the roar of the engine, the wind mercilessly tousled my carefully styled hair. But I felt something awaken inside me, just like when I was 18, full of vitality. After more than half a month of traveling, I finally returned to the hometown I've missed day and night. Although the journey was tiring, I also saw many beautiful sceneries. I walked my little dog back to the old neighborhood where I used to live. It's been many years since I last came back, but the house is as clean as if it had just been cleaned. I found it quite strange. As I turned around, I discovered a sneaky shadow behind me. Who? I quickly took out my pepper spray, preparing to respond. At that moment, I found a handsome man standing in front of me. He was smiling at me. Don't worry, miss, my name is Nathaniel. I'm a traveler passing through, looking for a place to stay. If you feel I'm bothering you, I can leave right away. Nathaniel seemed cultured. He was well-dressed. His demeanor exuded a certain elegance. I noticed the expensive watch on his waist. I couldn't help but laugh. After living in a big city for a long time, people become more realistic. I put away the pepper spray. I waved at him. Come inside. The girls here don't care about formalities. Before leaving, I told the villagers not to lock the door. If someone passes by, they can come in and rest for a while. Let's cool off for a bit. Nathaniel nodded and said, You are a kind person. I suddenly felt a wave of bitterness inside. Nathaniel and I chatted casually, but he suddenly became more energetic. He ran to the convenience store and bought 2 bottles of good wine. He said he wanted to drink with me to his heart's content. After a few drinks, Nathaniel started talking more. He said, My family is very wealthy. Living conditions are great, but I've never felt the warmth of family. I'm really fed up with the scheming and power struggles in those wealthy families. Rather than being entangled in those petty matters, it's better to go out and explore. Live a bit more freely. Over the years, I have traveled through mountains, rivers, and seas. I've finally come to understand. Rather than competing for things that don't belong to me, it's better to let go and have fun. Enjoy the remaining time well. After listening to Nathaniel's words, I felt a sense of compassion for him. Years ago, Margaret knelt before me, begging me to take care of Lucas. Her voice was hoarse. Life in a wealthy family is not easy. This child has no mother to care for him, so small. How can he manage? I looked at that child. So young. Suddenly, my heart felt particularly soft. I always wanted to find the warmth I lacked in my childhood through him, but I overlooked. I and they are simply not in the same world. I was lost in thought. Nathaniel suddenly reached out and gently tapped my forehead. He smiled and said, Your brow is furrowed so tightly. Is there something on your mind? Are you thinking about someone who hurt you? Oh dear, those are all things of the past. I've moved on long ago. I smiled and told him. I don't know why. Alexander and Lucas's faces reappeared in my mind. Alexander is handsome. He has a good temperament as well. The first time I saw him, I also had feelings for him. Alexander misses his late wife. Lucas misses his biological mother. And I have always been the extra person in the family. Even without Victoria, my place could easily be taken by another woman. This is something I can't escape. But here, on this land, I am the free Sophia. I am the only Sophia. So, I decided not to look back after my reflections. Nathaniel and I finished 2 bottles of wine in one go. From then on, we became good friends who could talk about anything. Later, he moved into my house. He accompanied me on bike rides. He helped me plant little trees in the wilderness. When the first little tree sprouted its tender buds, I saw that long-lost old friend again. Alexander is sitting in a luxury car, looking down at me from above. He said to me, Sophia, you must have relaxed enough by now. It's time to go back. Lucas needs your care. The sun is blazing down on the ground. Alexander lives comfortably in the north. He is not quite used to the climate here. He squints, looking at me, covered in dirt, showing a hint of displeasure. I know you feel uncomfortable inside, but there's no need to mistreat yourself like this. He starts to speak. His tone carries a sense of superiority. We've lived together for 10 years. If you want to go back, just say the word. I will definitely come to pick you up. His tone has a sense of condescension. People like Alexander, who have lived in comfort since childhood, are not used to looking down. For him to lower himself to come to such a remote place is already the biggest compromise he has made. Even I was surprised. Alexander, you must be joking. I'm just from an ordinary family. I'm not worthy of the Anderson family, I said lightly. Moreover, our previous agreement has ended. Why should I go back with you? Alexander didn't say anything. After a while, he pushed Lucas in front of me. This kid took a long time to respond. Then he whispered, I'm sorry, Sophia. As soon as he heard this, his face turned as red as a cooked shrimp. He quickly dove back into the car and refused to come out again. Alexander waved his hand. A few bodyguards in black quickly walked in. They were carrying several expensive-looking boxes. The bright red silk floated like fiery clouds in the sky, so red that it was hard to open my eyes. All these years, I never gave you a formal identity. Alexander's tone became serious. He looked deeply at me. This time you will come home with me. I will repay everything I owe you. He paused for a moment. Then he continued, Sophia, I, Alexander, want to marry you with the most grand wedding, to give you a formal title. From now on, you will be the rightful mistress of the Anderson family. When Alexander married Isabella, the wedding was particularly lively. Many people knew about it. I was in the South, and I also heard about that grand wedding. At that time, I also imagined to meet someone who truly loves me and cherishes me like Isabella. I do not seek a luxurious wedding, nor do I care about expensive betrothal gifts. I only want a steadfast and unwavering love. Unfortunately, Alexander cannot give me these. Alexander cannot give me these. His deepest love has long been given to Isabella. In his heart, there's always a corner that doesn't belong to me. Rather than living in someone else's shadow, I would rather live freely in this vast world, live freely and comfortably. Sophia, don't be ungrateful. Alexander's patience has run out. His tone became serious. I have been too lenient with you lately. You've forgotten the rules you should follow. He continued speaking. Come back with me. I will have someone teach you properly. What are the rules? Anyway, Alexander tightly grasped my slender wrist, insisting on dragging me into the car. Lucas was watching nearby. He showed no intention of coming over to help. The strength difference between men and women is too great. I couldn't break free no matter what. Just at a critical moment, someone suddenly pulled us apart. I slipped underfoot, falling backward. In the end, I fell into a familiar embrace. Nathaniel held me. He coldly looked at Alexander and said, Alexander, forced matters will not yield good results. Alexander's expression suddenly turned grim. Nathaniel, how did you end up here? I never imagined it. This person who travels with me every day turns out to be the famous Nathaniel of yore, recalling the family disputes he told me about. I couldn't help but look at him with a complex expression. He was once just a step away from the highest power, but at the crucial moment, he gave up all the wealth and glory, and left alone. From then on, he disappeared without a trace. Alexander, Nathaniel's words brought me back to my senses. Sophia yearns for freedom. Why must you confine her in that oppressive place, you know? In the past 10 years, she hasn't been happy. After a brief moment of excitement, I quickly calmed down. For these 10 years, I have been diligent and responsible. Women around Alexander have changed one after another. There are countless like Victoria. They frequently change around him, like a revolving lantern. As for me, I have been consistently by his side for 10 years. There are always whispers about Alexander. They say I am scheming, skilled in political maneuvering. Some even spread rumors, claiming I know some mysterious methods that have confused his mind. The real reason is actually very simple. I have never loved Alexander because there is no love, so there is no talk of hate, let alone happiness or not. I am just following the agreement, doing what I am supposed to do. After the contract expires, we will have no relationship anymore. I told Alexander all of this truthfully. He was very shocked after hearing it. He was stunned for a long time. He asked me, Are you saying that you have never loved me? He asked in surprise. Really, I nodded. Answer calmly, never. The heartbeat of that moment. It came too late and disappeared too quickly. Nathaniel chuckled softly twice. The laughter carried a hint of sarcasm. Alexander, it's been said to this extent. Please take your leave. Why bother making things more awkward? Alexander felt humiliated, angrily rolled down the car window. He urged the driver to hurry and leave at that moment. Lucas suddenly jumped out of the car. He hugged me tightly from behind. Maybe he knew. After this separation, we might never see each other again. He no longer adhered to conventions and restraint like usual. He spoke with genuine emotion. Sophia, don't go. I know I was wrong, Sophia. I miss you so much. No one but you. No one can make such delicious pastries. And no one plays racing games with me. The teacher taught me to pay attention to details. Now I truly realize. Sophia is the best person to me. I shouldn't have believed those rumors. I doubted Sophia's sincerity towards me. Sophia, can I call you Mom? I feel like I've never called you that before. Actually, it's not hard to know the truth. This father and son never took me seriously. How could they possibly care to clear my name? Until I completely lost it. I came to understand the value of sincerity. I gently pushed Lucas's hand away. My tone was indifferent. Lucas, I am not your mother. I have already done enough for you. I don't want to keep entangling with a child. Those intentional harms. I won't easily forgive either. Lucas looked at me with tears in his eyes. His voice was a bit choked. But I really miss you. Ever since you left. Dad goes to your room every day. He stays there for a long time. He found a puppy that looks a lot like Snowball. He even replaced the photos in the study with yours. Mom, don't be angry anymore. Dad and I are both thinking of you. I will help take good care of the puppy, and I will be filial to you in the future. Alexander's face turned red. His ears were even redder, almost like they were bleeding. Look at his reaction, no need to say more. I understand as well. I spent 10 years without making him feel anything, but I just left for a month. Isabella has taken my place in his heart. Human emotions are truly hard to grasp. I sighed softly. Snowball is just Snowball. No matter if it's a puppy or a person, no one can replace him, Alexander. Don't come looking for me again. In the past 10 years, I have never felt anything. Now it's even more impossible. You're wasting your time with me. It's better to put more thought into Lucas. I gently ruffled Lucas's hair. Then I pushed him in front of Alexander. I said seriously, don't let him grow up to be like you. Alexander listened. He approached me a few steps, somewhat unwillingly. Nathaniel pulled me into the car first. The car quickly drove away. Behind, the figures of the Anderson father and son gradually became smaller. Finally, they turned into a small dot. I turned to look at Nathaniel. I asked, Nathaniel, do you like me? I do. I like you a lot, he said with a smile. There was a sparkle in his eyes. It's not a fleeting kind of liking. It's the kind that wants to spend a lifetime with you. I just want to be with you. I've made up my mind about you. I will never change my heart in this lifetime. The sunset's light shone on his face. In the gentle breeze, Nathaniel said to me, 10 years ago, I just arrived in this city. I attended the company's dinner in a certain capacity. That night, I felt quite awkward in the crowd. I was completely out of sync with those elegant ladies. I made quite a few blunders, but Nathaniel became interested in me because of my genuine nature. At that time, I was troubled by a lot of trivial matters. It was you who made me understand. The world is vast. There are even more wonderful things outside waiting for me to discover. A casual remark you made me see things clearly, gave me the courage to break free from my predicament. Because of you, I made up my mind to let go of everything and pursue the freedom I desire. Fate brought me to this vast land and intertwined our destinies closely. This time, I will definitely not let go of your hand again. I reached out my hand and tightly held Nathaniel's waist. Answer. Okay, then let's stay here together to see the beauty of the world. Nathaniel is laughing especially happily. That cheerful laughter drifts away with the wind.